Welcome, adventurers, to another enchanting episode of Lore Drop. I'm Dungeon Master Eguile.
And I'm D&D Wife, your guides to the hidden depths of the world of Extrayus.
Tonight, we unravel the secrets that lie beneath the surface of our Homebrew campaign. We'll dive into the lore, the legends, and the magic that makes Extrayus so captivating.
We'll explore the stories behind the realms, the characters, and the world building that brings our adventures to life.
Whether you're a dungeon master seeking inspiration, a writer crafting your own fantasy worlds, or just a fan of immersive storytelling,
there's something here for you. Join us as we reveal the mysteries of Extrayus and share our creative journey with you.
Get ready for a new Lore Drop, where imagination meets creation. Let's embark on this magical adventure together. Welcome back, Lore Seekers, to another episode of Lore Drop. I'm your host, DM Eguile, and joined by my partner in magic and ever-enchanting D&D Wife.
Hi.
So if you're tuning in for the first time, this is the show where we dive deep into the lore, legends, and magic of our homebrew world of Extrayus.
Hey everyone, we're so excited to have you with us as we continue our exploration of the many magical systems that make Extrayus such a wild and vibrant world. Last time we dove into the intricacies of order magic, and today we're shifting gears to talk about something a little sparklier, arcane magic.
Arcane magic isn't just any kind of magic in Extrayus. It's really the backbone of our spellcasting, a force that once allowed mages to wield power without limits. But as the world evolved, so did the magic, taking on new rules, new risks, and of course, a bit of chaos around the way.
We're going to take you through the origins of arcane magic, why it's so pivotal to the world of Extrayus, and how it's been shaped by both ancient traditions and cosmic influences. Plus, we'll explore how this adaptable and unpredictable force has impacted society from its days of boundless power to the cautious and sometimes dangerous magic of today.
So grab your spell book, light a candle, and prepare to dive into the shimmering, chaotic world of arcane magic. Whether you're a seasoned mage or just a curious listener, this is the episode you do not want to miss. And don't forget, if you love what you do, hit that like button, leave us a review, or join the conversation on Discord. We want to hear your thoughts on all things magical.
All right, let's get this magic rolling. You're listening to Lore Drop, and this is the Arcane Tapestry of Extrayus. Let's dive in.
So with each time that we've kind of looked at all these magical systems, and now, we're at, I think, the last two.
Yeah.
But they are, for both two different reasons, some of the most impactful of kind of the magical systems of the world of Extrayus.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And this is because this is where it's the most plethora, right? Like, so whenever you have any kind of thing, right, the thing you can do the most. So, like, an easiest way to look at this is like in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, cantrips.
Yeah.
Right. So cantrips are just these things where essentially like anybody and everybody does them.
Yep.
And so it's like, oh, okay, this wizard can clean his clothes. Well, no one scoffs at that. Everyone can do that.
Everyday magic.
My grandmother, who's 99,
yeah, she can do that.
Wizard. She's level 1 wizard, but she can still cast prestidigitation.
All right.
And so it's that same kind of premise. So because it's everywhere, it's so predominant, it becomes a much different scaled object because it can become so infinitesimal. But really what we wanted to do is, both of us are really into magic, right? So
it's fun.
So because of that, we wanted to find a way to eliminate kind of what happens in a lot of games is this idea that like magic is so powerful that it has to be so limited.
Yeah.
And we love world building as much as we love D&D, but obviously, there's spells, slots for a reason because in a game, if everyone could just cast infinitely,
it's dangerous.
It would cause problems.
Yeah.
And so we had to create this idea of like, how can we get a magic that's used in every day, used in battle, but also wasn't going to be this like OP monster for like any player that decides to be a wizard or a sorcerer. And it's like, oh, I don't have to really worry about spell slots in some spots. Oh yeah, I'll do that because I'll just be flinging 7th level spells like it's nothing.
Why don't I just live there? I'm a god right there.
Yeah, and the biggest thing too was such a blank slate. It wasn't tied to anything specific. There's no origin really to it when it comes to its kind of creation.
Sort of just a byproduct of everything going on.
Right. As we learned, it was a kind of a hand-me-down from a world of another world's creation. So it was kind of part of our origin story. It wasn't really something that was like, wizards of old came together and made them.
Oh, well, I suppose the elves would have taught wizards, right?
Right, yeah, and that's
the
kind of the
beginning.
point. But even the elves themselves didn't really know or understand what they were doing.
That's true.
You know, but really the idea was just so that way it could be this moldable object, especially in the beginning, because the other big thing when we were envisioning magic, and that's why it was important with Arcane, is you know, it's such a young world, right? Because our world doesn't have like aeons and aeons and aeons. And really where I say young is there's not a lot of history to it either. It's kind of a baby planet. And so because of that, it's interesting to see kind of what will happen when we were like, okay, in the early stages, like we said, the era of Eden, no spell slots. What is the metaphorical world being built ahead?
There's no need for limits. Everything is perfect.
Yeah, right. And so that way we were like, okay, let's put that as our vision. That's kind of where we wanted to start. But as always, I'm kind of the one that's like, you know, looking at it as a DM, and I'm like, okay, well, this is, you know, if we do this, it's going to be 8d8 or this and that. But you were always kind of my grounding on like kind of your experts on like on your expertise on magic and kind of understanding like what needs to flow to make sense.
Yeah, you know, I ever since I started being able to read and I discovered fantasy novels, magic has just been like, wow, what if we can do that? So I've always been interested in that, and I've always researched historical magic as well as just like read my butt off of fantasy novels with various, I mean, quite a wide variety of magical systems, and they all have their drawbacks, their balances, and so it really gave me an idea for not just how magical systems are formulated, but also how they're made to fit into a world, how they fit into the laws of that world. And that's where, you know, it comes in when building a homebrew world like Extrayus, where it's, you know, even though it's a little bit loosely D&D, you know, we're sort of borrowing from a bunch of other things too.
Yeah, other stories and worlds out there.
Yeah, our rules are sort of like an amalgamation of things that we love and different rules that we appreciate more than others. So since the original Wizards and the Arcane Academies no longer exist, there was this need to sort of reinvent how magic entered the world again.
Right, like we don't have like a Mordenkainen's or a Leomons.
No, we don't have any famous really wizards per se.
There's none of that yet.
There's nothing in the world, at least that Luna knows, about any wizards or anything like that.
Yeah, but I think that made it kind of interesting. And where I kind of was like, hey, how would you, if you had this, if say you were in a world where this exists, how would you roll with it? And I think that really helped kind of get the idea of how the world would take that magic and go with it as like the eon, or in this case, the decades passed.
That's true. It was interesting to see how it might have been used and adapted, especially from a historical point of view, or at least like what you would think a structure would do. I think we've done a fairly good job of balancing it, of making sure that there are not just good and bad forces like any system, but also other balances that are required. You know, physics and forces of nature that are rules that cannot be violated. Those are things that need to exist as well.
Yeah, I think for me it was always like the easiest amalgamation I have for like arcane magic is that it's like silly putty, right?
Very
So
much
like you can mash it up against another magic and it'll kind of copy it. It won't be the greatest, and
but it'll do a good job.
You can distort it a little, maybe make it bigger than it once was, but it's not as good of the original. You know, and it's very moldable and pliable, and that was kind of the idea behind. Okay, let's put that in the world instead of it being this like rigid, structured thing that is kind of this like ye old magical rules and regulations. That was, and because to me it was because in the world of Faerun, their magical rules are really built into like their deity history. You know, with Mystra and all that, and Mithra and all that. You know, all these different celestial beings that play on. Okay, why do you have 9th level spells only? Well, this god said no more 10th level. It's like, okay, well that doesn't really exist in Extrayus.
Not really. There's no gods.
There's no gods yet. So it's kind of hard to explain that. And so like you kind of hit it on the head where it was, we use the elves as kind of being the bringers of arcane
there's no
magic.
Wizards. Yeah, nobody's teaching anything.
Right, and since as if you've listened to previous lore drops, the elves themselves are just kind of birthed by magic. They know it, but they quite don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's a sort of instinctual knowledge,
right? And so
without understanding.
Some of the elves went to writing books, others went to just doing trial and error, and so that kind of was taught to the world, to the other races, And we also wanted to make Arcane be a lot more versatile in the fact that it's used for everything, and as well as it's one of those things where you could be born with it. You can also learn it, because we wanted it to be like it's so there, like it's such
prolific.
an excess. It's so there that anyone, once they have kind of that principal understanding of it, can then start practicing it, even if they themselves don't necessarily come from like a magical origin.
Yeah, some Joe Schmo from the middle of nowhere who never read a book in his life can learn to read and go learn himself some magic. That's how it works, and it's really awesome because it is such a pliable. It's a magic that wants to help. It's a magic that wants to do anything in its power to become the thing that you need.
Yeah, and so when looking at like how it actually kind of works mechanically, that versatility needed to be kind of played into that. And so one of the biggest things, and this is kind of that funny thing that I play into with like trying to explain how all this stuff happens, is like Arcane is the one magic that's kind of able to kind of tap into the others for a little bit, right? So you cast Fireball or Firebolt. That's Arcane kind of stepping into primal magic for a brief moment and generating fire in a unnatural way that primal fire wouldn't have been generated.
Yeah.
Right. And so because of that, it's versatile. Now it's never going to be as hot or as powerful as true primal
badly
like I will always contend that a dragon's fire breath will always be stronger than a wizard's fireball.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's just because it's a shoddy imitation of the real thing.
Interesting.
When you cast like Time Stop, that's dipping into the laws of order and time. Obviously not something you want to
order.
And not something, as we've learned in the previous episode, not something you want to constantly do, because order has a way of balancing itself out.
If you're not careful.
Right. And so that makes it really cool in the sense that like Arcane is this kind of like, hey, I get to try out everything. It's not going to be as good no matter how powerful I get. I can be archmage, but I still never will be quite as powerful as if I were to actually tap into that magical source.
I can refine it and make it better, but it'll never be as good as like the real raw thing.
Right. And so because it can do so many things, that's why it is so versatile, right? Like it's everything from a healing spell, growing plants out of the ground. That's obviously tapping into some primal energies there. All the way from, resurrecting bodies and stuff, pulling people from beyond the grave.
Right.
These
That's
are
not
all
normally something anybody can do.
Right. But it's tapping into another school of magic in order to temporarily gain that kind of property.
Exactly.
Now, obviously, when it was unchecked, there were no rules for resurrection. So you could just essentially find anyone, poof, you're back alive, doesn't matter.
Thank you.
True resurrection was just was just something that could be popped off like a cantrip.
Yeah, so essentially nobody had to die. If they caught it right away and you weren't like horribly mauled, like you were good.
Right. And so because of that, though, like to make it kind of functional, we had to really break it up into all these schools of magic, essentially schools of arcane, because there are so many different ways. And so essentially by breaking it into the different schools, which a lot of games, a lot of worlds do, and there's pretty standard kind of breakdowns like conjuration, illusion, necromancy. And what those all kind of do is kind of tells you where exactly is that arcane taking from?
Yeah, where's channeling?
So obviously, if you know necromantic, you're kind of messing with order magic. You're messing with the natural order of things.
Yeah.
So anyone who's doing that kind of knows what they're stealing from and the potential blowback that can come from pushing too far. We also have a lot more unique ones in that we have a few schools of magic that are unique to the world of Extrayus. And in the sense that there are some, because arcane is so versatile, arcane stones were created just by absorbing the pure amounts of arcane energy around the world of Extrayus, and they just permeate the surface of and the lower levels of the planet itself. And so these were found by other species. So instead of using the magic themselves, they found other ways to use that and create new forms of arcane magic, like necrotech, which is really interesting. That we'll see later on, which will go into a much more different deep dive for that one.
Yeah, we see mashups of different styles too.
And so, instead of just doing the traditional, arcane is everywhere. And it just really represents that kind of magical force that we have, but really we wanted to figure out a way to sort it.
Yeah, it needed to have a sort of structured approach to it, despite it being such a wonderfully loose sort of magic where
you can do everything.
Yeah, right.
Well, then what is everything?
It's your best friend. It wants to help, but it's really tough. You need to still structure it in some way. So to learning and using arcane magic. So this breakdown allows for that. A creative storytelling as different cultures and individuals can focus on specific schools, reflecting on their unique philosophies. And so we can develop them independently and provide the different rules and regulations for them as they kind of naturally come.
Right. I think it kind of like it takes a little nod from things like, excuse me, takes little things from like Harry Potter, where it's like, well, you can learn like a little bit of everything, or you could just specialize in only one school, and that's all you're going to do, and that's everything. So we really wanted to also have it where, wouldn't countries, if everyone's made of magic and using magic, wouldn't countries do the same?
Yeah.
It could be the land of illusions and the entire city is invisible because everybody and all that you do is focus on illusion magic.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Right.
That'd be
so
interesting.
it'd be really interesting to see. And so the culture being like, if you're not a great illusionist, you're worthless.
Yeah, so you get kicked out.
Because it would have to start being, because it's so popular and there is so many, you would really have to specialize to set yourself apart. Whereas in most worlds, and especially most games, being a jack of all magical trades is usually like the best thing to do.
Right,
the
you
bard,
never know.
The bard, have a little of this, have a little of that.
Just
but
in
in the world of Extrayus, it's actually the reverse. The more specialized, the more focused you are on one particular skill or spell style, you're going to be more more valuable to the world than if you were to try to learn a little bit of everything.
No, that's just to the world. That's not saying a jack of all trades is useless now.
Yeah.
But that's just
Disclaimer.
saying to certain people, certain places, you will be a lot more valuable as an individual.
Right. And so obviously, as like we were talking in the beginning, when making something like this, there's always that worry of it being too OP.
Yeah.
And so the real thing we also have with arcane magic is because it's so moldable, it's not a static thing. So
it evolves.
we've seen as the world has built and different effects have happened, changes have happened to arcane magic itself. Like we've discussed things like the Reaping Games, which is this, catastrophic event where foreign dimensional invaders are coming into Extrayus, and even their own energies are so strong that they're blending in to create an entirely new form of magic, specifically kind of tailored to going after arcane.
Yeah, and then imposing itself on the rules of the world.
Right. And then so what that started to do is that started to create things like, okay, if you just willy-nilly cast, there was magical blowback.
Yeah, for the first time.
Right, so now it was, okay, I'm going to cast a teleportation spell. Why did 90 sheep just appear out of nowhere?
Yeah.
And so that started to make it now a much more tricky game because you could see grand wizards casting a simple, spell, level 1 spell, and then blowing up.
Yep.
Because of some sort of blowback that had happened, and they rolled wrong on the chaos roll. So that really changed it. And then again, because like we said, order magic tends to step in when things go too far.
Yeah, and create balances.
When it first was the elves, it was very, secluded to one species. Only one kind of group was using arcane. But once it spread to the Humes and to the Dimmen and to the Scalekin and everything else, that pushed it over the limit.
Yeah.
And then we started seeing things like other ways to balance, things like material components. Now, you needed to sacrifice something in order to get that primal energy. You couldn't just get it for free anymore.
Yeah.
Much like Full Metal Alchemist and the equivalent exchange system.
Very good, yeah.
Is a real good way to look at it.
Yeah.
And then it even got so far as it was, well, now the body can't handle so much. You continue casting, sure, it's not spell slots, but your body will eventually deteriorate.
Can burn out, yeah.
Now you can go past that and go even further, but every time you do, more of your own essence is burned away.
Yeah.
I always find this as the kind of like the hero surge in a lot of anime and manga.
Yeah,
where
it's like the last effort.
Where they've already said in a previous scene, I'm out of all my magic, I got nothing, and then suddenly they do because they're tapping into their life force to cast whatever spell. And Arcane does allow for things like that to happen. It's very big risk with but also big reward.
Yeah, it's like an after effect of adrenaline in our world, right? Like if you want want it enough, you can, but it comes with a price.
Right. And so, when looking at specifically how arcane magic has impacted Extrayus itself, politically, socially, it's kind of 2 points. So there's first how it started in the time of Eden. So that's before all the rules, before all the lockdowns and the challenges and
limitless
stuff like that.
bounty, casting willy-nilly because no one was harming anybody.
Yeah, so that's when we saw huge territorial change, like structural, geographical changes to the world as mountains are created because someone feels like lifting up so they can block a view.
Wonderful structures.
Exactly. And cities popping up at nights, all kinds of stuff. And so, but then that's what caused that, that extreme freedom caused all those consequences. Sequentially as it went through and became more and more exploited. So now we look more at what we have currently in the story, like today's arcane magic in the world of Extrayus. And now it's a lot more kind of constrained. And so since you have things like components, life force, and then just the unpredictability of chaos magic surges, it really has now become almost like this like scary taboo thing, right?
Yeah, so people don't want to cast that much
magic. So if you're coming into a town and you're like, it's an old Western and you're walking up and they watch you, and instead of going and grabbing a glass, you cast telekinesis, everyone's going to run away from that person.
Oh, yeah.
Because that person has a death wish in their mind.
They want to blow up.
They're willing to take a chance. Rather than go walk up and grab the glass, they're going to take a chance for something bad to happen.
Really? You can't just walk the 3-4 feet.
Exactly. So it becomes this idea of like things, and I think one of the biggest things I pushed was like flight magic. Before, getting around, teleportation, flight was such a simple thing. There was no backlash. Now there's a potential of not only teleporting to the wrong location, but the spell blowing up in your face. And nothing's better than while you're trying to teleport your body of something going wrong.
Oh, right. That's the best scenario.
Anybody watch The Fly? And so when that happened, things like only natural flight was really something that could be reliable because no one was willing to take the risk of casting fly more than once and each time potentially having it blow up and go awry.
So that's why having wings or natural flight is so important and valuable.
Right. And that's a big deal. And so because of that, you had to watch out for the chaos magic surges. Now, we talked about this in the lore drop about chaos magic. Go back to that one if you want to learn more. But really, it plays on Arcane because Arcane is the one that triggers it the most because of its pliability, right? Gotcha. Because of that, it allows it to really go. Now, the difference, though, is that now I always speak about chaos, and we've been referencing a lot of the negative effects. Now, there are sometimes positive. There's always pros and cons. So there is the chance that a lot of people who believe it's worth it because it's a 50-50. It's not a, everything is going to blow up in your face. It might heal you. It might, return a lost loved one who died or suddenly bequeath you with thousands of gold. There are sometimes positive effects to the chaos surge. So there are a few, out there that believe, hey, it's worth it because maybe in a time of need and I'm struggling and I don't know what to do, I can cast a simple spell. It transforms into something that saves my life.
Wow. Yeah.
It's worth the gamble.
Right. If the other option is obviously doom.
Yeah. I mean, it's roll the dice.
It's worth it.
And I feel like that really plays into the aesthetics of what you kind of want in a TTRPG magic system.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then the thing that I like the most is kind of a third system that got kind of built into the world of Extrayus. As with all things, it becomes a currency.
Oh, yeah.
And so there are many cultures and societies that now will use it to sell. So essentially, you could go into a merchant's area and you can say, okay, I don't have the gold to buy this. I will offer you a third level spell. And so what that would mean is now that merchant or that owner can call upon you whenever they feel like to cast a third level spell for them and not have to be basically worried. So you have these societies where there are things like magical brokers and merchants where they have what you would assume is an entourage, but they're actually all these like indentured
Hired
mages.
people. Oh,
I wouldn't even say hired; they're indentured.
some of them because they need
they've sold
money
their
or something.
spells, and so for until they cast those magics, they have to stay by the side of this merchant or broker to be basically readily available.
It's like
so
Power.
if they want to cast Fireball, they tell Frank next to him to cast Fireball. If that was what Frank owed, then Frank gets to leave. Let's hope it doesn't turn Frank into a sheep.
Oh no! Or what if he blows up?
Or blows up, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen. But the merchant and the broker doesn't have to worry about the effects.
Yeah.
They kind of skirt that, and so
That's
there are a lot of places where it shows just how much the exploitative, people are willing to let others take the risk
In some seedier places
and see what happens. That way, they don't have to take that because obviously, where there's a will, there's a way. There's always going to be a way to find a way to exploit it.
Oh yeah.
And
People
so
will
this
always
is, I
find
think,
it.
right, when this gets kind of more spread out in the world, because this is exclusive to a lot of like the Hume countries. But obviously, if this kind of mindset were to spread, that could lead to some utter chaos.
That's some trouble making in the magic right there.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And so really what it is it's kind of created this interesting social implication in the world of Extrayus when it comes to Arcane, because all history, all written that still exists, speak of like the glories of arcane magic and the amount of power and abilities and the Humes were never
casting.
safer and more prosperous, and the elves still existed and everything was good. But then now there's all this like suspicion and fear when it comes to around Arcane, but you have the individuals who want to learn.
Is that all just self-taught?
Well, self-taught. You also have issues with, obviously dogmatic countries that start to preach. Just for every country you have that embraces magic, you're going to have another country that outlaws it and taboos it.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's going to be a lot of dichotomy when we get more into the Hume lands and the countries that exist in there. But when it comes to arcane magic directly, it just has that idea of now why there aren't so many mages, right? It's not a world it's a world full of magic, but no one willing to cast it.
Ooh, or at least most not willing
to
cast
right?
It,
And the key word willing, right? No one
willing.
is just going to willy-nilly cast. It's always in a sign of desperation or need. Whereas arcane magic used to once be that like kind of thing that you can just do
revered and loved
whatever
thing.
you want. But really, I just, the biggest thing with Arcane, and because it's so vast, it's going to be our ever-evolving magic. And that's what I love about it the most when looking at our magical system, in that just as much as we look at the other ones and they kind of create the natural, this is what kind of creates the supernatural in our world and allows for enemies and bad guys to have a lot more access to abilities. The whole idea of that, we ran into a joke in this kind of little side point in campaign 1 with civilians being so weak in D&D and stuff like that,
like a level 1 spell could just
a standard
destroy
person just has
a building.
nothing. But why not have a world where almost everyone is a sorcerer? Everyone theoretically has access to like 8th, 9th level spells. They're just need to be pushed in order to do it. If their life is on the line, or if they're desperate for food, they're going to be more willing to use that magical energy. So it's less of this ability of that, I can't, and more of just I don't want to, or I won't. Right. And so I think that's really, as we get more into the world, into the world proper, we're going to see as that develops with Arcane. And I mean, it's already developed so much in just a couple hundred years. I think that, let's just say in another couple hundred, Arcane itself might be something entirely different, and has again. And really, what I foresee it maybe becoming is its own side thing and creates its own magical array within itself, and we have kind of like an array within an array.
Some Inception.
That's what I'm saying, an Inception array. But that's really kind of the cool aspect of it, and I really wanted the magic because we kind of have little bits of everything, little, like we said, Full Metal Alchemist, the Magicians, Arthurian magic, World of Warcraft magic, all mixed, because the principal essence is that we wanted it to still be a magical world, but not one that could be abused.
Yeah, or one that could be abused within certain parameters, right? It has its limits, its rules and regulations.
Yeah, but the only thing is, it's one of those ones where only the future will tell.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to do maybe a lore drop in just a real life few years.
You're right.
And just be talking about, oh man, when it was first started, now it's entirely different, and we have a whole new system. And that's what I really love about the homebrew and creating your own world and your own magic system.
It's so versatile in the way it can move and evolve and change. It's perfect.
But that wraps up our deep dive into the mysteries and chaos of arcane magic and Extrayus. From its limitless origins to the volatile magic of today, Arcane has always been a force to be reckoned with.
We hope you enjoyed exploring the layers of arcane power with us. Whether it's bending reality or causing a magical surge, there's always more to uncover, and we can't wait to keep sharing this journey with you.
Thank you once again, lore seekers, for joining us on this magical adventure. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It really helps the podcast grow. And if you're hungry for more lore, join our Discord community where the conversation never stops.
Until next time, keep your wits sharp, your spell slots ready, and your imagination ever sharper. This is Lore Drop signing off. See you in the next deep dive.
Have a good one, guys. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Lore Drop. We hope you enjoyed exploring the rich lore and magic of Extrayus with us.
But the adventure doesn't have to end here. Join our Couple of Nerds Discord community to dive deeper into the world of Extrayus, share your own stories, and connect with fellow adventurers.
And don't forget to check out the Couple of Nerds YouTube channel. There you'll find all our content, from thrilling campaign highlights to miniature painting tutorials and more.
We love hearing from you, so be sure to leave your thoughts, questions, and ideas. Who knows, your input might just inspire our next episode.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through Extrayus. Until next time, keep your imagination alive and your dice ready.
Stay curious, stay creative, and may your adventures be ever wondrous.
See you in the next Lore Drop.